Well, hey there, friends. So it's time to do the video I've been putting off because this year was terrible. This is my 2020 favorites. I shouldn't be that cynical. It's been a rough freaking year, though. I mean, for everybody, and it's been an interesting year for me in terms of my journey with this channel and with the sort of larger tarot world in general. And, I will start by saying I've learned some interesting lessons this year, some very difficult lessons about putting yourself out there in the world as a content creator. And I think one of the biggest lessons I learned this year was that there's a when you make yourself available in a way, there's a gap between the way people perceive you as a viewer and who you really are. So for me, I think I'm just me and I know who I am. But when we're viewing people who are whose work we like and engaging with them sort of in this receptive way, we are always making assumptions about them and sort of filling in character details that we don't really know about them. And so when maybe you actually get to know a person who you've been a fan of for a while, you suddenly realize, oh shit, they're an actual human, and they've got all the fucked up human things that are there. So it's been interesting for me to kind of come to terms with the fact that, in a way, there are consequences for making these sorts of things, and I don't mean that in a negative way, but it's sort of an interesting thing about being a creator, and as you build an audience, that audience is going to see you differently than you really are. And there was some difficult struggles for me in that experience this year in terms of my own being humanness. And I think I also had my own naivete challenged about the landscape. I think I assume frequently that because folks who engage with me through tarot are similarly minded politically or in worldview, I'm making a false assumption, because really, as a community, the only thing that we have in common is divination. Everything else is, on the Venn diagram of things, there may be overlaps here and there, but we're all very different. And I think my own assumptions about, that if you're a reader, you are probably, an empathetic, slightly progressive, if not lefty, minded person, and that's not always true. So that I've had my own biases challenged that way. So it's been quite a year, and I hated it, and that's a sentiment I'm sure many of you share, if not all of you. But there have been some things that are fun, including a handful of decks that I'm going to share with you. These are the ones that I remembered, as favorites in the year, and they're not necessarily decks that came out this year. They're decks that I engaged with this year. So it's not necessarily that these are all new. It's just that they're the ones that I got this year, or that I engaged with in some way, in a special way. Always on my table are the World Spirit Tarot and La Corte de Tarocchi. Those are probably my two favorite decks, and I didn't bring them out because I've shown them so many times. But I guess let's get started. Let's dive into the good stuff rather than regretting the bad stuff. So this first one is interesting. So this is a deck that I had ages ago, and I sold it at the beginning of the year because I never used it. And then I really kept reaching for it and forgetting that I sold it. And so we're back. I ordered another copy. Like, this is the dumbest shit. It's the Anna K Tarot. I just never used it because I just didn't respond to it. And then as soon as it left, I was like, where's that Anna K deck? And I've been using it a lot for some reason. It's so weird that, you know what I mean? Like, which is one reason why I probably have so many decks, is that I forget to, no, I don't forget. I worry that I'll have separation anxiety. And so since it's not a perfect deck at all. There are a lot of things I don't like about it, but there weirdly is a lot of things I do, and it reads really well. Tarot's so weird, it's so strange. But so that just came back in the last few days. It feels sort of appropriate for the winter. I don't know. It's got like a very solstice-y quality to me for some reason. and the color palette feels very sort of light in the darkness kind of situation. It's beautiful paintings. I think it just I don't know. It's all the same things that are wrong with other decks. It's it's not well. It's all white people. But I will say there is some age and body diversity in there, which I think is a good thing, because there's also the diversity of thinness and youth that we see, and I'll talk about just as an example of that. I think this is another deck that I loved this year, and this is a new deck, newish. This is the True Heart Intuitive Tarot by Rachel True. I can't remember the artist's name. Will you focus? It's so hard dealing with these cameras. I can't really decide what the best way to do this is. Maybe it'll look better. Maybe I can sort of adjust the coloration and the editing. Anyway, it's gorgeous, and it's ethnically or culturally diverse. It's very thin and young. But I will say that if I were to ever teach sort of a Tarot 101 class, and gosh, the light, it's like I can't sort of win. It's either too dark in here or too bright. If I were to ever teach a Tarot 101 class, and I do have a walkthrough of this, so you can see it, I would probably say let's all use this as a starting point, because it's modern, but it's got timeless elements to it. It's Rider-Waite-Smith, but it's got some really clever interpretations. It does have lots of skin tones. It's just thin and young, which I am not. But I really do like it. I think the box is crap, and I threw it away because it was falling apart. So it's just sort of sitting out. But also, it's sister to Anna Kay in the sense that box is crap also. I forgot how bad it was. So themed decks are a thing, and they're not things I usually reach for. But there were like 2 theme decks this year that I really liked really a lot. And the first one is the Dark Goddess, which is this new edition from Schiffer. It's glossy. We know how I feel about glossy cards. The packaging was ridiculous. I mean, the cards weren't damaged, but it showed up, and the cards were all out of their sleeve, and they were all over the box, and it was just chaos. Maybe appropriate for a deck full of Dark Goddess energy. And I wrote to Schiffer and I said, this is ridiculous. And they said, well, we'll send you another deck. I'm like, thank you, but just do it right the first time. You should know better. Why? But this is a deck that I had known about for a long time and didn't want because another lesson that I've learned in 2020 is to stop being such a dummy about not engaging with decks that I don't think are for me. I loved the idea of the deck, and I just thought, great, this is a deck for women to work with these goddesses. And then my friend Liz said, you're really gonna like, this is my favorite story, the Baobo, who I hadn't ever heard of in mythology, and I love this. My friend Liz said, you're gonna like this deck. I know you are. I know you. And she does, and she was right, and she gave it to me for my birthday. And I read the book, and I thought, this is brilliant. And I loved it. And it's not an everyday kind of deck, but it's just great, And despite the glossiness, the deck shuffles really nicely. It's not that sticky gloss we used to get from Schiffer in the old days. I just don't know why they can't get their shit together with the packaging. It's just frustrating, because they're not cheap decks for mass market. You know what I mean? So that was the first one, the first theme deck that I really liked. The second one that I really liked is the Hoodoo Tarot by Tiana Lee McQuillar, artwork by Caitlin V. Foisey. Hoping I'm saying that correctly. So this was a deck that I had to get after a couple of Instagram friends and Queen Osset both just sort of talked about how brilliant it was. If you're not following Porous Palms on Instagram, you should be, because he's a very smart guy. And he did a live sort of discussion of this deck. And just sort of concurrent to that, Queen Osset did a brilliant video, talking about this deck and her traditions. And I really will try to remember to link that below. So I had to get the deck. And I'm not a root worker. This isn't a tradition that I engage because it's not my history. But reading the book was really good. And this is a themed deck. And the same goes for the Dark Goddess. I think a themed deck is successful when the theme and tarot are both elevated by being partnered. So I think both, they're not systems that were designed to go together, but they work together really well, and the creators have managed to blend them into a new, deeper system. And so this deck, I guess I should show some cards. It's just a little clumsy packaging. The book is excellent. I would love a book 3 times as large, to be honest. So much crap around me. And I did also read her book Rootwork, because Tiana Lee McQuiller's book Rootwork, because I wanted to learn more. I wanted to understand more about where this was coming from. So the book is essential, and it's so good and so well designed, and the art is, again, probably not going to be easy to see. It's got this lovely sort of sepia toned. It looks maybe in the video like photograph, but it's just these beautiful paintings and drawings, and the way that the connections between the hallmarks of Rootwork and tarot are blended is incredibly good. Cardstock's not great, but I don't think that this is Destiny Books. I don't know that they are known for cards, but the stories just it's so good. So this and the Dark Goddess Tarot really were theme decks that made me go, wow, these are so brilliantly constructed, so brilliantly put together. And then I feel like the theme and the tarot are both made more themselves somehow by being partnered in that way. So I loved those 2 decks. And again, they're not decks that I, in my tradition, are going to reach for every day, but they are decks that I think are brilliant and that I'm happy to have and to be able to work with. And the other thing about both the Rootwork, the Hoodoo Tarot in particular, is that it set me on a whole path. So I had read Zora Neale Hurston's Hoodoo in America, which is a great essay. If you haven't read it, you should. You can get it online, I think. But she had written a couple books about voodoo in Haiti. And so it set me on this path of sort of reading her other work again, and then exploring the realities of these religions. I think religion's sort of a misnomer. These traditions, these cosmologies that are painted in American media certainly as sinister and dark and full of curses and zombies, and the totality with which we white Americans or pop culture, anyone who sees pop culture, views hoodoo, voodoo, vaudou, vaudin is so misconceived. And it wasn't just that deck that got me going down this path of researching and reading about these experiences. Friends have told me stories about their own paths and their own experiences. But it made me realize, like, oh, even the perceptions that we have about voodoo are wildly racist and so colored by colonialism and white supremacy. And I'm not sure, the people who agree with me already are not going to be surprised by that, and the people who don't are going to tell me to shut up. But I for years would see decks that weren't created for me, and say, that's great, like that audience needs that, and then say, but it's not for me, and I'm not gonna invade that space. But what I neglected to understand, and what I have come to understand now, is that it's a great way of learning about a community that you didn't have exposure to. And in so doing, when you read, and that's the thing, it has to come from authentic sources. It can't be, some mainstream like movie. Although the actor Jimon Hansu did a brilliant documentary on Amazon Prime. You can get it, and I'm going to tell you the name. I had looked it up before, and then I tried to make this video last night, and it didn't work. Jimon Hansu. I cannot type. Documentary. In Search of Voodoo, Roots to Heaven. So you can find that on Amazon Prime, and it's a very, very well done documentary that shows voodoo in Africa, in the place where he grew up, and fascinating, and just it gives you the reality of it, and it gives you the whys behind it, and not some sort of scary, Hollywood Leonard Nimoy in search of situation that is tainted by white supremacy and racism. So engaging with decks that are not made for you, you do engage cultures and communities that you hadn't done before, and you can easily go down a rabbit hole of empathy by learning about things you hadn't ever realized you were misconceiving or misconstruing because of what you've been told your whole life. So, if you haven't gotten the Hoodoo Tarot and you want to go to, it's a great place it's a great gateway into learning about the realities of what root work is in the United States, and very easily go down the path of finding out what it looks like, or what voodoo looks like, in its naming variations across the globe. Just make sure, again, that the work that you're finding is authentic. I had a very hard time, for example, finding information about Haitian spirituality that wasn't written by white people. And one of the books that I ended up reading, I chose because ultimately the author talked about how these traditions wouldn't even be here without, the transatlantic slave trade and colonialism, and the intense complexity of Haiti's politics and its history. And so, I at least said, well, this white person knows that they're potentially appropriating. So that at least lent me some, but it's interesting too, because the fact that we can't find more primary source material from people who practice these traditions actively and grew up with them, I think is a combination of that. Sometimes it's none of your business, and sometimes they're not the ones who get asked to write about it. And publishers don't go out in search of work on these topics. They wait for it to be delivered to them. And if you go back and rewatch the panel that we had last week, there's a certain amount of distrust with publishers and people of color right now, and it's reasonable, and there's a great discussion about that. So anyway, those were two themed decks I loved, and that's how they can open the door for sort of fascinating exploration. It would be remiss if I didn't talk about Marseille decks, and there are two. This was my favorite Marseille deck of the year. This is the Francois Gassman 1840. It's an Yves Reynaud deck. It is a Marseille deck, and I have a video on it. It's one of my favorite colorations I've ever seen. First of all, this robin's egg blue backing is delicious, and then there are just these beautiful greens in this deck that are just these these light sagey greens. It's not woodcut, I don't think, or maybe it is, but it's beautiful, and I love the coloration. And if you think Marseille isn't pretty, then this is one to check out. And because it's Yves Reynaud, it's beautiful quality, and they're limited edition. They're numbered. The next one is very, very recent. It was given to me by a friend, and it is the Gulliver Tarot, the Tarot de Gulliver. And I had seen and heard of this, but I didn't pursue it because I thought it was huge. I thought it actually, just partly based on the name, I I thought it was going to be as big as Terra Noir. It's large for a deck, but it's not crazy large, and it's fabulous. I love it. I love it. It reminds me of Terra Noir. It reminds me a bit of the Parpolka. So it's very French. I think in its style and its choices. They all have this sort of big oval border, but I love it so much. It's so great. It's just one of those things where as soon as I saw it, it made me happy. And I did a live unboxing and walkthrough of it on Instagram. Just trying to sort of use that platform more too. So I love this. I was so thankful for the gift. It comes with a great big book that I can't read because it's in French. So someone told me about an app that actually does a decent job translating, so I might actually take advantage of that. But I think you have to order this from the creator, I believe, Arcana-Sacra, Arcana-Sacra.com. I'm delighted by this one. Just trying to clear the decks, as it were. Oh, what's next? I had sort of a religious experience unboxing this deck. This is the Star Seekers Tarot, and then when I went, the next week to do a reading with it, I was like, oh, it's nice. I didn't have quite the same reaction that I did when I saw the deck as an unboxing, but it was late, and I think in a weird way, sort of much of the year was coming through, and I was just so relieved to have something peaceful to do in that moment. But I do really like this deck a lot anyway, so it's not going anywhere. And I think that my being so moved by it in the video had a lot to do with the fact that I was exhausted and this year's been tough. And this was kind of a lovely little respite in the center of it. It's a collage deck, but it's beautiful. It's so delicious, and you just could eat it. I feel like it would taste like lavender and honey. The coloration's so good. I love these darker cards. They just pop in such a gorgeous way. It's got beautiful card stock, and I'm looking at it now. Its palette is not one that I'm gonna reach for all the time. That sort of pastel, not pastel really. That sort of lavender. But I really like it, and I would absolutely. I mean, this is a deck that I would, if I read for people in person, which none of us can really do anymore anyway, I would kind of have out for someone who maybe was a little nervous. It's gorgeous though, and so I'm happy that I have it, and I'm happy that I kept it. I don't think that the religious experience I had unboxing it is quite as powerful, but this is a deck that I had the opposite situation with. So I did an unboxing of this, and I felt kind of meh about it, and then I looked at it again a few days later, and I said, "Oh wow, this is really amazing! I remember why I backed this." This is the Keymaster Tarot, and it's a sort of Marseille inspired deck, but it uses the French suits and the Marseille suits. The Marseille suits are in this sort of gold foil, so it's harder to see. The trumps are not at all Marseille. They actually feel a bit more esoteric and a bit more maybe Golden Dawn-ish. But the artwork has this great sort of that very sharp, I don't know how to describe it, but that sort of playing card style of art. But very rich in coloration. It's beautiful. There were a few versions of this that you could get. I got the very basic version because I had been backing so many decks by that point. So mine came in this. It actually didn't come in it, but it came with this satin baggie, and then 2 title cards. So I kind of wish I had gotten the book, but I didn't. And you don't need it. I would like to hear or read what they said. I'm not a fan of this edge is on tacky for me. At least it's not glistening gold, but I don't need a lot of shiny on my cards. It's just not a thing I dig, which, you'd think someone as sort of leonine as I am wouldn't mind that, but one of the editions came with a box, which I kind of wish I had sprung for because this bag's a little tough to get the deck in and out of, and I don't want to damage the cards, but 'tis what it is. But I really do love it. This just came in yesterday, so I just feel like I would give it an honorable mention because this is just a deck I think that people are going to be talking about. I won't show any cards because I just did a walkthrough of it. I think it's a deck that's going to cause a lot of conversation, as it should. It's Tarot of the Divine Masculine. It's beautiful. I only think, I only have 2 more. So, this, was another deck that I got after sort of wising up about decks that I didn't think were made for me. This is the, Aphro Goddess Tarot by Andrea Furtick. I love that she signs the box. Again, gorgeous production quality. Beautiful little guidebook. And then I love a matte gilding. I've never seen a mirror finish on the back of a card before. How amazing is that? And just these like rich, beautiful paintings. I did do a walkthrough of this one too, so you can see the whole thing. But just like so, these rich colorations and just these beautiful, beautiful cards. My throat's getting dry. I'm almost done. I have to go finish making the holiday pâté for my family's gifts. Just dropping off gifts without even seeing family. 2020. So, I don't know if this came out this year or last year. But this was a deck that Queen Osset raved about. It doesn't have a copyright, does it? And so I went to order it, and it doesn't say. It doesn't matter. So anyway, I mean, just look at the colors. Look at the colors. Look at the like depth and richness. So good. So beautiful, beautiful, amazing work of art. Oh, and there's a little magnifying glass because the text in the book is kind of small. So, really just exceptional stuff. We're so lucky with these decks. There's like so many good decks out there. And this one's great too because it has the box and then it also comes in this gorgeous red velvet bag. I think theoretically the red velvet bag is where the cards are really meant to live so that you can carry them around, but I keep both in there because it's just so delightful. Whoops. The last one was sort of one of the most my most favorites of the year. It's the Shimmering Veil by Sila Conway. It is a beautiful series of hand-painted images. Again, I did do a walkthrough of this. This is maybe my favorite of the year. But that's hard to say because there's so many good ones. I mean, all of these. And there are some that I just like left off the list. Like I'm realizing now I didn't include Tower of the Divine, which I really loved. It was another themed deck that I sort of think works fairly well. So this is just gorgeous stuff. I edged it and I don't like what I did with it, although I do have another copy of it. So I could theoretically use it. But I don't know what I would edge it with instead. But yeah, it reminds me, not the art, but the sort of the vibrations and vibrancy of the cards, the Margareta Peterson, and maybe even a little bit of the Japaridza. There's just this life and flow in the paintings. So those are the decks that made this year a little bearable. Oh, we can't not talk about this. This is the other thing that made this year bearable. Fucking Animal Crossing New Horizons. Like, this legitimately was like the best anxiety medication, well, other than my actual anxiety medication. Like, look, I don't know if you can see this. Annabelle is singing to 2 of my villagers. I mean, how freaking cute is this game? I should do a Christmas Island tour. Yeah, I can't play. But anyway, I can't because I'll just sit here and play while I'm recording myself. Animal Crossing New Horizons was a lifesaver in a way. And my partner and my 2 younger sisters and I have been playing. 2 of my best friends have been playing. We visit each other's islands. We make each other, snowflake pochettes. And we just, obsess about Tom Nook. And Animal Crossing memes. So that, not tower related, but you know, one of the highlights for sure of the year. I've tried to get into other like simulation games like Stardew Valley, and I can't quite figure out my way around it. And I really love Mario Kart, but it's like murder on my wrists, like major. So I'm trying to find other games that are like chill and fun. So if you have any recommendations, let me know. Because, you know, Animal Crossing there's some days where there's a lot to do, and there are some days in a row where it's just like you go and you give your villagers gifts, and you dig up your fossils, and you dig up your bells, and you put it down. But it's just been such a balm. I love it. It's so silly, and they're just cute little animals. So anyway, yeah, that's it. That's 2020 in a nutshell. You know, I'm thinking a year ago at this time, well, in February of last year, well, February of this year, feels like last year, I got this cold that wouldn't go away, and it was the worst cold I'd ever had, and I was like coughing like crazy, and nobody, you know, I just assumed it was a cold, and then who knew? So I don't know for sure that I had it, but it sure felt like it. And here we are now in December of 2020, and holy shit. So, you know, to quote Counting Crows, it's been a long December. But maybe this year will be better than the last. Maybe next year will be better than this one. Long December, and anyway. Take care, be good, and I'll see you soon.